आज रात 12 बजे से
So this episode of Bikers on PMS is very exciting. Today we're gonna catch up with a globetrotter who just can't stay still. It had to take a worldwide catastrophe and locking down of a country to keep her at home. We are meeting Candida Lewis from Hubli, who tells us about her new book, the famous solo ride from Bangalore to Sydney, and how she's spending her days at home. So if you're looking for tips on how to travel solo, stay tuned.
Hi Candida, how are you doing?
Very good, Sid. How are you?
Very well. It's just been nice and quiet these days.
Yes, indeed. Very quiet. Not something that I'm used to.
But at least that gives you time to plan your next trip whenever that will be.
Yes, it sure does. Like finally after 5 or 6 years, I'm finally at one place for more than 2 weeks. And I can finally sit down and maybe write my book on my journey from India to Australia, spend more time with my family.
So tell me about your book. Your book recently came out. And what's it about? And
So the book Candid Tales is about my ride from 2015, where I rode through 22 states of India and almost 32,000 kilometers. So a writer named Aditi Rao took stories from that ride and added her own twist to it. And so now there's a book about 10 different stories from 10 different parts of India.
so you're usually a solo traveler. It's more like you've always been practicing this social distancing. Right? You traveled 6 months from Delhi to Australia, or rather Bangalore to Australia, I'm sorry. So did you already know that this is gonna come out? That something like this is going to happen, so let me practice it before I get to the real deal.
Yeah, so I'm used to being alone and traveling alone. First of all, I'm the only daughter, so growing up was like that for me. My parents used to work and I would be at home. Even when I'm riding alone, most of the time I like camping alone and staying at a place for like 5-6 days with no other interactions and stuff. But the tough part for me right now is being in this confined space. Like at least on a motorcycle, I get to ride around the camping spot, or there's a lot of animals around, the birds, and you can go for a swim and stuff like that. But being in an apartment doesn't really give me that freedom to do that. So that's the only tough part for me right now.
So what are you up to these days? What are you?
Yeah, so every time I'm on the road, I always carry at least 2 books with me, but I never get the time to read. But being at home gives me a lot of time to read now. So every day I'm trying to finish at least one book, or being on the road every day. I feel like I have the time to read, but it doesn't happen because the entire day I'm riding, and then once I reach my spot, I have to keep up with social media, keep posting, edit videos and stuff, so I don't really have the time to read. But now it's nice, so I get to read. I'm also learning to play the ukulele, so hopefully before this 21-day lockdown I can play a few songs. Yeah, and just cooking with my mother, because I don't really get to do that very often.
Okay, so let's get back. Let's get back to your trip. How did you plan for your trip, and how much of it actually went as per plan?
So to begin with, I'm not much of a planner, but for the Australasian Odyssey, I had to plan because it was the biggest budget trip, the longest overlanding trip that I've ever done. So that is why the planning. And then I also figured out that the documentation process is the toughest and the most difficult part of this entire process. So yeah, I definitely had to start at least 1 or 2 months before I could actually leave. But yeah, I also was planning on packing my bags at least 15 days before I could leave, but I ended up doing it just one day before I left with the help of a few friends. And then I also knew that I was going to ride through 10 countries, but I had only planned on the first city, which was Hyderabad. It was the only city that I knew that I was going to stay at, and from then on it was just random. But I'm just very happy that I did not plan the whole thing, but went with the flow. Also took every day as it came. That is why it ended up being a 8-month ride instead of just a 4-month ride. And yeah, you can never really plan enough for it to like go smooth, because there's so many things that happen on a daily basis, and sometimes the places are so beautiful that you just want to stay back and not like rush through things, and the people that you meet on the way tend to keep you grounded in one place for a few days. So yeah.
So you talked about packing and you only had one day to pack. Essentially, when anyone will pack for a trip like this, they have very limited space. What do you carry? Because it's all about carrying essentials and stuff. How much of the stuff did you carry that you did not use on the trip?
So when I left on the ride, initially I was carrying a lot of spares, a lot of tools, very few clothes. I was carrying a lot of camping stuff. But then as I rode through India, I realized that I don't really need the camping equipment, because I was only staying in friends' houses and also in hotels in a couple of places, and you can't really camp in India because it's not very safe. That's when I realized, I think when I was in Calcutta or something, I just left it with a few friends over there, the camping gear and all of that. So that gave me more space to carry the essential stuff. And then when I got to Thailand, I realized that I was carrying all these spares and tools that were unnecessary, like hoping for a breakdown. But then that's when I gained the trust of my motorcycle, and I figured it out that this is why I chose this motorcycle, because it's one of the most reliable bikes in that segment. So I said there's no point in like just carrying so much of weight around, and at that time I was using soft panniers, like soft luggage. So every day when I would reach a spot, I would have to carry all my bags to the hotel room, which got really tiring. Like if I had panniers, I could have just locked it up on the bike itself. But because of the soft luggage, I had to carry all my bags every day. And which is why when I reached Thailand, I just left all the tools and spares with my friend. And I said that when something happens to the motorcycle, that's when I'll figure it out, because I just don't want to be carrying so much on me. I just carry very few things, but not everything like I was carrying before.
And how did you go about, because the whole trip was about creating content, because that's a very important aspect of doing the trip. How did you go about creating content? Because I'm sure you don't get internet all the time, everywhere. How did you, over the 8 months, how did you manage that piece out?
So actually the whole trip was not about creating content. I was doing the content because I knew there were so many people following me and like wanted to know what I'm doing on a daily basis, and like if I wouldn't even post something for a day or so, people would be all worried and asking if I'm safe or not. So it was that way, and then because of creating so much of content, I never felt lonely, because I always knew that there are so many people who are following this whole journey, and that I should definitely keep them updated. So like every time I would stop for chai or like for a break, I would always try to at least post one story, and not like reply individually, but at least just post something. But yeah, it is tiring, because some days when I would ride like 600-700 kilometers and I would not feel like going through any of the footage, but I knew if I don't do it on that same day, it would just only get piled up. So somehow I just like got through it, and I think all I needed was 5-6 hours of sleep. As long as I got that, but sometimes definitely it got very hectic, and also when I would visit villages and was staying with my friends, I wanted to be in that moment. I wanted to like spend quality time with them and not constantly be on the phone and keep replying to messages and stuff. So that's why I allotted like 2 hours of time every night to do all of that. So while I'm with them, like be in the moment, just take what I need, like just take a couple of shots and a few 5-second videos and stuff like that, so I'm not constantly on the phone.
So at least you had the parents not worried, and you had your friends not worried. So, and you had to be disciplined enough to create it. So tell me, how do you choose a motorcycle for a trip like this?
See, everyone has their choice when they have to choose a motorcycle, but when you're going on such a big trip, you have to first figure out the budget, and you have to keep in, like, I've always wanted to ride a BMW around the world, but then I realized that if I'm going to spend so much of money on the bike, then I wouldn't have the money to ride around the world. So I was searching for a motorcycle that was below 2 lakhs. The only motorcycle available was the Impulse, the Domina, and the Royal Enfield and stuff. I already owned a Thunderbird, but just before I could leave, like the past 6 months, I was having a lot of trouble with it, and most of the time I would be at the garage repairing it. So that's when I realized, and I was on a couple of forums and I would read quite a lot of reviews, and that's when I realized that the Domina is quite a reliable bike for the price range it is at, and then the ABS is the most needed thing, especially when there's so many dogs and cattle always running around when you're doing these big trips. Yeah, I think for that price range, the power and everything that the Domina gives you was good. And that's when I approached them and I said that I really want to take this bike on this ride. Would you like to be a part of it? And that's how it came into action. But yeah.
If you have to choose just one moment from the trip that you always have, I know it's a difficult choice for a memorable trip like this. If you have to just take out one day from those 8 months.
The one day, I can give you 2 days actually. The 2 most memorable days for me was the day when I started the trip in Bangalore. Until the day I actually left the house, I never knew this ride was happening. Like, I told my very close friends just a week before I left. I announced it on social media just one day before I left. And leaving my house at like 6 in the morning, that's when it hit me that this is actually happening. But when I reached Vidana Sauda and as I rode to the main point and watching all these bikers, there were at least some 170 bikers there at 6 a.m. in the morning waiting for me. That was like, I can't even describe that moment to you, and like everyone clapping and saying that we are so proud of you to be doing this, and we are all going to follow this journey of yours, and we're going to pray for you. And that's when I realized that I have to do this right for them, not just for myself. And the second thing was when I got to Sydney, and the same thing happened over there. Like, there was a lot of friends of mine waiting for me at this Sydney Harbour Bridge, and not only my friends but Alistair's mother was there, like for who I was doing this ride. Her being there and me finishing this entire journey for her, for Alistair, It was very emotional. Like I will never ever forget that, because on the way there were so many times that I thought that I would not make it. There were so many instances that I thought I would die and stuff like that, and so many times that I wanted to run back and question myself about what I was actually doing. And yeah, and just the starting and ending of the ride were crazy, but there are thousands and thousands of memories in between that I will never ever forget.
So, do you have a destination for your next trip whenever that's going to happen?
I was thinking maybe I don't have a destination, but I've always had a dream to ride from here to London. So I was kind of hoping that would happen this year, but with Europe being so bad, I don't think it would be possible to ride this year. Yeah.
Hopefully, you can do that next year.
Yeah.
Alright, Canada, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us and telling us what your ride was about and how people like us can plan trips like that. Thanks so much, Candy. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Tell us in the comments below who you would like us to catch up with, and we'll get them here. Don't forget to like this video, to share this video, and follow Trip Machine for more such content. We will see you guys very soon with another episode of Bikers on PMS.
आज रात 12 बजे से